Welcome to Late Night Science, a place where thought and wonder drift together like leaves carried on a quiet stream. If you are new here, I invite you to find a calm space, soften your breath, and let the evening unfold with us. Tonight, we step into a forest, not only as wanderers among trees, but as listeners to something deeper, something hidden beneath the canopy. To those who have already subscribed, thank you for being part of this growing circle of curiosity. Your presence shapes the rhythm of our nights. If you are listening now, tell us where you are, which corner of Earth you are joining from, because just as forests connect through invisible threads, so too do we connect through these moments. And if the calm of science and story calls to you, remember to like and subscribe, so you may return here whenever you need a night of quiet exploration. Now, let us begin. You are lying beneath a canopy of leaves. Above you, fragments of light break into green, shifting gently as the wind passes. The air is soft and yet alive with something more than silence. You hear it not with your ears, but with your skin, with your breath, with your sense of presence. The forest hums, not with machines or wires, but with unseen currents, deep and ancient, carrying messages through roots and soil, through leaves and streams. It is a hum of continuity, a murmur of connections, stretching back long before you were born. In this moment, a question stirs inside you. Could forests think? Could they remember? Could they connect in ways so intricate that to enter them is to step into the nervous system of the Earth itself? Science tells us what is measurable: molecules of carbon drawn in, oxygen released, sunlight folded into sugars. But science is also the doorway to wonder. For every fact lies another mystery, for every explanation another silence that whispers at its edges. If a tree can sense light, reach toward it, and share what it gathers with neighbors through roots, is that not a kind of awareness? And if fungi lace the soil with invisible threads, linking tree to tree, passing signals in moments of stress or need, is that not a kind of communication? You are invited to listen to this question as if it were a lullaby, not to solve it, but to let it drift into you. The forest, in this sense, is more than a landscape. It is a body, every tree a cell, every root a wire, every canopy a sheltering dome. The spaces between are not empty. They are charged with currents of air, chemicals, sounds, and light. To lie here is to feel the presence of an intelligence so quiet, so slow, it escapes the restless rhythms of your human mind. But once you pause, once you allow yourself to slow, you notice. You feel it. Your nervous system thrives on speed. Signals fire through neurons in flashes measured in milliseconds. The forest thrives on patience. Its responses unfold in hours, days, or even centuries. What is fast in you is slow in the forest. What is immediate in you is stretched across generations in the canopy. Yet the design is strangely familiar. Networks, communication, feedback, memory. Roots intertwine underground like wires in a circuit. Water carries nutrients as blood carries oxygen. Chemical messages are released when danger approaches, like neurons signaling pain. The body of the forest and the body of your mind both rely on networks of connection. Two systems, one built of bone and flesh, the other of wood and leaf, yet both revealing the same pattern of life woven into matter. Consider this. When you are afraid, your body releases signals. Adrenaline surges, nerves fire, heart quickens. When a tree is attacked by insects, it releases chemicals into the air, warning its neighbors. The surrounding trees respond, preparing their defenses, thickening their bark, altering the taste of their leaves. Is this survival instinct? Is this intelligence? The boundaries blur, and still doubt is essential. Scientists are cautious. They remind us that trees do not think as humans think, that memory is not the same in wood as in neurons, that communication in forests may be metaphor rather than cognition. And yet, when you listen not only with the mind but with the heart, the metaphor feels less like exaggeration and more like recognition. Doubt sharpens knowledge. Wonder opens possibility. Between them lies a fertile ground, much like the soil itself, rich with what can grow. As you breathe beneath this canopy, you may feel your own mind begin to slow. Stress softens, thoughts drift, your nervous system quiets. It is as if your body is entraining itself to the rhythm of the forest, aligning to its pulse. You are no longer only a visitor. You are a participant in its stillness. The canopy above is your ceiling, the soil below your bed, the breeze your lullaby. In this shared silence, the forest does not seem passive. It seems watchful, like something that has always been here, waiting for you to notice. Perhaps forests do not think in the way you define thought. Perhaps they do not remember in the way you define memory. But perhaps they do something deeper, holding a collective awareness stretched across time, one that flows not through the flash of a single mind, but through the vast patience of an ecosystem. To imagine the forest as the nervous system of Earth is to grant it both dignity and intimacy. It is to see the planet not as a machine, not as a resource, but as a living presence with signals, rhythms, and breath. It is to wonder if your own thoughts are not isolated sparks, but part of a greater field of consciousness where forests, oceans, skies, and minds all hum together in unseen resonance. The forest beneath you exhales. You inhale. The currents exchange. The cycle continues. And slowly a realization spreads. You are not lying beneath the forest. You are lying within it. You are part of its nervous system, a single cell in its great body, connected by the air you breathe, the ground you touch, the water you carry in your veins. And now, as the light softens into evening, you hear it again, the whisper beneath the leaves, a call not to answer, but to stay listening. Could it be that every breath you take is also a breath of the forest, that your chest rises and falls in rhythm with the canopy itself? This thought carries you gently, almost imperceptibly, toward the next question, one that will open with the dawn of our next reflection. If the forest can whisper like a nervous system, then could it also breathe like a lung? Could the body of Earth and the body of your mind mirror one another in the act most essential to life, breathing in and breathing out? Breathe in. Hold it for a moment. Breathe out. Feel the air moving in and out of your body, carrying oxygen into your blood, carrying carbon dioxide back out into the world. This rhythm is ancient, simple, unending, and yet within it lies one of the greatest mysteries of all life. For your body does not breathe alone. Each inhale is entwined with the vast breathing of forests. Each exhale is answered by the sigh of trees. The atmosphere is not an endless storehouse, but a living exchange, and in this exchange, forests are not just scenery, but the lungs of the earth. Imagine each tree as a single alveolus, the tiny air sac inside your own lungs. One tree is small, but a forest is immense, a canopy stretching wide like an enormous lung, filtering, balancing, and sustaining the air you now draw into your chest. Every leaf is a surface of exchange, every green blade a living membrane where gases shift quietly between worlds. Carbon in, oxygen out. Day after day, century after century, the forest exhales the breath of life into the atmosphere. Science describes this in the calm language of photosynthesis. Sunlight strikes the green pigment chlorophyll, water molecules split, carbon dioxide is drawn in, sugars are created, oxygen released. A cycle of chemistry, measured and mapped, elegant in its simplicity. But if you step back, if you soften the lens, it becomes something more. It becomes breath itself, a pulse as real as your own heartbeat. The forest inhales and exhales with you. You are breathing together, and in this rhythm lies a profound mirror. The forest is the earth's skin and lungs combined. It filters the air as skin filters sensation. It absorbs, it protects, it exchanges. Without forests, the air would thicken, carbon would choke the skies, balance would collapse. Without your lungs, your body would falter in the same way. The parallels are not just poetic, they are structural. Your biology and Earth's biology echo one another as if carved by the same hand of time. This connection is not new. Ancient cultures sensed it long before science gave it words. Shamans, poets, mystics spoke of trees as breath-givers, as bridges between earth and sky. They saw the rise of mist from forests as the world itself exhaling. To them, forests were not resources but sacred lungs, life-giving spirits in green robes. Today, satellites confirm what myth once whispered. Forests truly regulate the breath of the planet. They draw down immense rivers of carbon, they release floods of oxygen, they cool, they balance, they keep alive the fragile air we depend upon, and yet, like all lungs, forests are vulnerable. Scar tissue forms when lungs are injured. Deserts form when forests are stripped away. Just as your breathing weakens when illness spreads, the planet's breathing weakens when deforestation advances. Balance falters, carbon builds, oxygen wanes. To wound the forest is to suffocate the earth. To suffocate the earth is, in time, to suffocate yourself. But let us rest again in the rhythm, not the fear. Because forests are not only lungs, they are also healers. They can regenerate. Burned land may sprout again, saplings may rise from ash, oxygen may flow once more. The body of Earth remembers how to heal itself when given the chance. The breath can return, steady and deep if the wounds are tended with care. Think of your own breathing patterns. When stress rises, breath shortens, becomes shallow. When calm returns, breath deepens, slows, grounds you. In the same way, forests regulate the nervous system of the planet. They slow the racing pulse of climate, they deepen the breath of the atmosphere, they calm the fiery storms of imbalance. Forests are not just lungs, but regulators of peace. It is easy to think of air as invisible, empty, meaningless, yet every breath you take is heavy with history. The oxygen filling your lungs at this moment may have been released by a cedar centuries ago, by an oak last autumn, by a fern in the depths of a rainforest. Air remembers. It circulates endlessly, weaving every living being into one shared exchange. You breathe now, and your breath may nourish a tree tomorrow. The tree exhales, and its breath becomes part of your bloodstream. You and the forest are not separate entities. You are two parts of one shared respiration. Science offers us numbers to measure this dance. Roughly half the oxygen you breathe comes from terrestrial plants, and the other half from oceanic plankton. Forests hold the balance, shaping the air composition in ways that make human life possible. Without forests, oxygen levels would not sustain creatures like you. Without forests, carbon would overwhelm the skies, trapping heat, shifting climates, unraveling balance. The numbers are precise, but the experience of it is poetic. To breathe is to enter into covenant with forests. Philosophy invites us to pause with the word breath itself. In many languages, breath and spirit share the same root. Breath is not only biology, but also life force, essence, soul. To breathe deeply is to be alive. To lose breath is to lose life. When forests breathe, they do more than regulate gases. They sustain the very essence of living presence on Earth. They are the breath of the world's spirit. Now let us hold the mirror closer. Consider how your body's nervous system coordinates breath. It sends signals, contracting your diaphragm, expanding your lungs, pulling in air. Exhalation follows, gentle release, muscles relaxing. The cycle is both automatic and voluntary, both unconscious and conscious. You can control your breath, but even when you forget, your body remembers for you. The forest breathes in the same way. Seasons pull in carbon, release oxygen. Droughts may shorten the breath, rains may deepen it. The cycle continues whether you notice or not. The forest remembers even when you forget. And here lies a deeper metaphor. The nervous system of the forest may be its breath itself. The rise and fall of oxygen, the pulse of carbon exchange, the flow of gases through the canopy, these are signals as real as electrical impulses in neurons. They regulate balance, they coordinate survival, they communicate the needs of life. If roots and fungi act as wires beneath the soil, then perhaps the atmosphere itself is the messaging above. The nervous system metaphor takes root here in the very act of inhaling and exhaling. Close your eyes now, if only in imagination. Picture the canopy overhead, leaves opening to the sun, exhaling oxygen into the sky. Picture your own lungs, alveoli opening to air, drawing oxygen into blood. The scales are different, but the pattern is the same. The microcosm and the macrocosm are mirrors of each other. Your breath is Earth's breath. Earth's breath is your breath, and so, lying beneath the forest canopy, you realize you are not only inhaling air, you are inhaling time. You are inhaling memory. The molecules entering you now may once have passed through the lungs of an animal long gone, or through the leaves of an ancient tree. Every breath is history, every breath is inheritance. This recognition softens the boundaries between you and the forest. You are no longer only a witness to its breathing, you are a participant, a partner. Each inhale you take is a reply to the forest's exhale. Each exhale you release is a gift the forest receives. Breathing is dialogue. Breathing is communion. Breathing is recognition that you and the forest are not two but one. As you rest in this thought, the rhythm continues in, out, in, out. The breath does not end, just as the forest does not end. You feel the resonance deepen from air to soil, from canopy to roots. And just as the nervous system of your body extends beyond lungs into the hidden circuits of your brain, so too does the nervous system of the forest extend beneath the soil, into unseen webs of connection and memory. Which leads us to the next question. If the canopy is the lung, what then lies below? If air is the breath, what is the memory? Beneath the leaves, beneath the breathing surface, what hidden network carries signals, whispers, and stories through the soil? Beneath the forest floor lies a world you cannot see. Yet it is more alive, more intricate, than the surface that greets your eyes. You may walk across the soft carpet of moss and soil, hearing only the faint crunch of leaves underfoot, but beneath that thin veil, an entire universe hums with activity. Roots spread outward in all directions, splitting, braiding, converging, searching. Mycorrhizal fungi weave themselves through those roots, forming filaments so fine they make the threads of spider silk seem thick. Together, roots and fungi create a hidden web, a vast subterranean internet that pulses with signals, sharing food, warnings, and whispers of survival. When you imagine the brain, you think of neurons firing across synapses, carrying information through tiny sparks. The forest does something remarkably similar. Roots branch like dendrites, fungi form synapses of exchange, sugars and minerals flow like neurotransmitters. Where the brain deals in milliseconds, the forest deals in hours, days, even years. But the resemblance is striking, a pattern repeating itself across scales of existence. Networks are nature's chosen architecture, and here, beneath your feet, that architecture takes on the role of memory. Scientists call this the Wood Wide Web, a phrase both playful and profound. Experiments reveal that when one tree struggles, others connected through fungal threads may send it sugars, easing its stress. When pests attack, warning chemicals travel underground to nearby roots, preparing neighbors to defend themselves. The soil is not passive dirt, not empty substrate, but an active medium of storage, communication, and resilience. It remembers what passes through it. Fire leaves chemical signatures, floods alter its structure. Decay enriches it with new instructions for growth. Like memory imprinted on your brain, soil holds the story of what the forest has endured. Pause here and consider what memory really is. In your mind, memory is the imprint of experience, patterns strengthened, connections reinforced, signals stored for future use. Soil performs something similar. Nutrients recycled from fallen leaves, chemical traces of droughts and storms, fragments of ancient roots, all become stored instructions ready to guide the next generation. Soil is the forest's collective unconscious. its archive of survival. To kneel down and touch it is to place your hand upon centuries of memory, layered one season at a time. And yet, memory is not always orderly. Just as your mind holds dreams, fragments, and shadows, soil too carries chaos. Fires may scar it, but from that scar, seeds sprout. Floods may drown it, but waterlogged soil becomes a record of resilience. Death in the soil is not an ending, but an entry in the archive. Rotting wood, fallen animals, broken branches, all dissolve into nutrients that keep the forest alive. Memory in soil is not static, it transforms, just as your own memories shift, deepen, and reshape themselves with time. Imagine again the scale. A single teaspoon of healthy soil may contain billions of living organisms, fungi, bacteria, archaea, all entangled in cycles of life and decay. Billions in a space smaller than your thumb. They interact constantly, creating chemical conversations so complex they rival the chatter of neurons in your brain. This microbial symphony allows forests not only to endure but to adapt. Just as your nervous system rewires itself in response to injury or learning, the forest's soil network rewires after fire, after drought, after disturbance. Memory is survival both in the mind and in the ground. Consider the metaphor of wires. In technology, wires carry electricity. In your body, nerves carry signals. In the forest, roots and fungal threads carry sugars, nitrogen, phosphorus, even electrical impulses faint enough to require sensitive instruments to detect. Yes, impulses. Recent research suggests that fungi may use electrical patterns to regulate the flow of nutrients, much like neurons fire to regulate information. The language is slower, the signals less obvious, but the resonance is uncanny. Beneath the soil, there is circuitry. This does not mean that forests think as humans think. Doubt is necessary. Skeptics caution against exaggerating metaphors, reminding us that survival strategies do not necessarily equal intelligence. But then again, must intelligence always look like ours? If memory is the ability to hold the past and use it to shape the future, then soil qualifies. If communication is the ability to send signals between entities, then fungi and roots succeed. If cooperation is the ability to support the survival of others, then the underground network fulfills it. The lines blur, and wonder slips into the cracks of certainty. What is striking is that forests, through this hidden web, embody both generosity and competition. Sometimes trees feed one another, sending sugars from those in light to those in shadow. Sometimes they compete, cutting off flow to rivals, hoarding nutrients for themselves. The network does not function as utopia but as reality, an honest mix of support and struggle, just as neurons in the brain sometimes amplify signals and sometimes suppress them. The soil holds both kindness and conflict, memory of sharing and memory of scarcity. Soil is also a book of time, layers upon layers, each recording a moment of history. Archaeologists read these layers the way neuroscientists read scans of the brain. Ash reveals fires centuries past. Pollen grains tell of forests that once stood and species that vanished. Bones and shells dissolve into fragments, leaving chemical shadows that linger. Soil does not forget quickly. It remembers in silence, even when no one listens, and yet soil is fragile. Strip away the forest and the memory fades. Expose it to relentless sun and rain, and the archive erodes. Without roots to hold it, without trees to feed it, the web phrase, the network, collapses. Soil without forest becomes dirt, disconnected, lifeless, memory lost. In your own body, when neurons die, memories vanish. In the Earth's body, when soil dies, the memory of ecosystems disappears. What once was resilience becomes silence. Still, resilience lingers. Seeds may lie dormant for decades, waiting for fire to clear the way, waiting for rain to awaken them. Spores may rest quietly until conditions return. Memory is never fully gone. It waits patient in fragments. Just as forgotten memories sometimes surface unexpectedly in your own mind, the forest's memory may reawaken from the soil when given time, and so you walk through a forest and you feel not only what you see, but what you cannot see. Beneath every step is a story written in roots, in threads of fungi, in layers of earth older than your lifetime. You are walking on memory, crossing an archive that remembers fire and rain, birth and death, silence and song. The soil does not speak in words, but in signals. And if you pause, if you listen differently, you may feel that whisper rise through the ground into your own body. The nervous system metaphor deepens here. The soil is not simply storage, it is process. It is the thinking ground of the forest, the place where signals gather, disperse, and decide. To imagine soil as the brain of the earth is not far-fetched. It is both metaphor and possibility. Beneath the skin of leaves, beneath the breath of canopies, lies the circuitry of roots and fungi, weaving the silent memory of the planet. And so, you realize that the forest is not merely a collection of trees, not merely breath and canopy. It is also an underground city, vast and hidden, humming with wires and signals, each root a street, each fungal thread a whispering messenger. And as you hold this image, you feel the transition to a new thought. If the forest beneath your feet resembles a nervous system, then what of the forest around you, rising above? What if the surface world of trunks and leaves is itself another city, towering, pulsing, alive with signals of its own? Forests are not scattered accidents. They are not random gatherings of trees thrown together by chance. They are ancient, deliberate, intricate, vast cities of green. When you step into a forest, you are not walking into wilderness, you are walking into architecture. Every trunk is a tower rising with patient strength. Every branch is a bridge stretching to meet its neighbor. Every leaf is a window opening to the sky, drinking light. Together they form neighborhoods of life, districts of growth, avenues of exchange. Listen carefully, and you might hear the pulse of this city. It is not the pulse of machines or engines, but of sap rising through xylem, water climbing to the crowns of giants, sugars flowing downward to roots. It is the quiet heartbeat of circulation, slow but unbroken. The city is alive with movement, though its rhythm is almost too patient for the human ear. Look upward. The canopy is a ceiling of light shifting and breathing. Sunlight strikes leaves and instantly a cascade begins. Photons become sugars, sugars become energy, energy becomes survival. This is the city's economy, its marketplace where trade never stops. Each tree produces wealth in the form of food, and each shares or hoards it according to its own design. Some distribute generously through roots and fungal threads, others keep it close, defending their stores. The city thrives on both cooperation and competition, never fully one, never fully the other. Listen deeper still. Forests pulse not only with flows of water and sugar, but with chemical codes. When pests bite into leaves, invisible messages are released into the air, scents sharp and subtle, drifting to warn neighbors. When drought grips the soil, roots exude compounds that alter microbial activity, calling for help from the unseen allies below. The city speaks in a chemical language, words written in molecules, sentences carried on breezes and currents. It is a language without alphabet, yet one that conveys urgency, defense, and survival. The city also pulses with sound. Not the sound you hear, though birds and insects add their symphonies, but vibrations within the wood itself. Water moving through vessels creates faint clicks, imperceptible and less amplified. Branches strain in the wind, sending tremors through the trunk. These are the city's whispers, messages carried not only in air but in vibration. Like the murmur of a distant crowd, they hint at conversations too subtle for most ears. Step back and see the pattern. A forest is not chaos. It is order layered upon order. Towers of trunks anchor the city. Bridges of branches connect neighborhoods. Bridges of fungi link the underground. Streets of air carry scents, streets of water carry flows, streets of light channel energy. This is a metropolis designed not by blueprints but by evolution, an architecture refined over millions of years. And like any city, the forest is never still. Young saplings rise like new constructions, while old giants collapse like abandoned towers, making room for others. Disturbances, storms, fires, floods are not endings but phases of renewal. Where one block falls, another rises. Where one canopy breaks, sunlight floods the ground, igniting growth from seeds long waiting. The city renews itself through destruction, always balancing decay with rebirth. To compare it with the brain is natural. Neurons fire, circuits form, signals compete and collaborate. In the forest city, every leaf is like a neuron sparking with light, every branch a dendrite reaching outward, every root a synapse below. Both systems pulse with patterns, both thrive on networks, both depend on connections to function. And just as the brain can fall into silence when networks are severed, so too can the forest when its towers are cut, its bridges broken. Yet within its pulse lies a paradox. Forests feel timeless, eternal, yet their cities are fragile. One disease can sweep through felling towers. One chainsaw can silence centuries. One fire, if unbalanced, can consume whole neighborhoods of green. Resilience exists, yes, but so does vulnerability. The city thrives because it is many lives together, not one alone. Remove too much, and the pulse slows, the metropolis falters. Still the forest persists, often beyond the scale of human life. Trees outlive generations, saplings rise where no one watches, and roots keep whispering long after footsteps fade. The green city does not belong to you, but you are always welcome to walk its streets. When you look closely, you see not only trunks and leaves, but societies in motion, lives entangled, exchanges invisible yet constant. To stand in the middle of such a city is to feel small but not insignificant. You are part of its rhythm, breathing the oxygen it releases, feeding it carbon in return. You are not only visitor but participant, woven into its circuits with every breath you take. The city pulses in you as much as around you, and now you may wonder, if every tree is a tower, every branch a bridge, every leaf a signal, could the city itself be speaking? Could these pulses of light, sound, and chemistry be more than mere mechanics? Could they form a language? Scientists debate, wonder stretches, imagination lingers. Between skepticism and awe lies a space where the question grows. Perhaps forests are not only cities, but also conversations. Perhaps these towers and bridges, these scents and signals, are words waiting for us to learn how to listen. What does it mean to speak? For you, language is breath shaped into sound, vibrations of the vocal cords arranged into words. But for trees, speech is not confined to air and voice. It is slower, older, and carried in molecules, scents, and vibrations. The forest has its own tongue, but to hear it, you must slow yourself down. You must learn to listen to a rhythm stretched far beyond your own. Imagine the moment when a caterpillar bites into a leaf. To the naked eye, it is a small act, a bite too quiet to notice. But within the leaf, chemistry awakens. Compounds shift, molecules sharpen, volatile signals lift into the air. Neighboring trees receive the warning and prepare, fortifying their tissues, altering their chemistry, arming themselves with bitterness or toxins. Without moving, without sound, the forest has sent an alarm. A message carried not in seconds of speech, but in drifting currents that linger, in signals that take hours or days to reach their receivers. This is not a language made for us. It does not rush. It does not shout. It is slow, patient, deliberate, and perfectly attuned to the timescales of trees. What seems glacial to you is immediate to them. They do not need to cry out quickly, for their lives are not measured in moments. They speak in the long breath of seasons, in the drawn-out sentences of years. The air of a forest is never empty. Invisible to your eyes, molecules move constantly, weaving a tapestry of scents and signals. Some tell of hunger, an insect's bite. Some tell of thirst, drought gripping the soil. Some tell of danger, fire's smoke drifting in. Others tell of opportunity, pollinators invited, partnerships offered. Every molecule is a fragment of a conversation, every drifting particle a word in a language without grammar, yet rich with meaning. But air is not the only medium of speech. Beneath the bark, vibrations travel. When wind bends a trunk, when rain taps against leaves, when roots stretch through soil, subtle tremors ripple through the wood. Scientists have found that trees produce faint clicks as water rises through them, tiny bursts of sound too high-pitched for human ears. These clicks are like syllables, signals of stress or thirst, whispered through wood and root. Whether they are deliberate words or incidental noises is debated, but the fact remains. The forest hums with vibrations, some carrying intention, some carrying consequence. And still, there is more. Trees release compounds not only to warn others, but to heal themselves. When injured, some produce resins or tannins that act as bandages, sealing wounds, deterring invaders. In this sense, healing is also language, an expression of resilience, a declaration of survival. To release a chemical is to state, I will live, I will endure. Even silence becomes a form of speech in this context, for not sending a signal may mean safety, neutrality, or choice. The question arises, is this truly language or only chemistry? Is the forest speaking, or are we only interpreting patterns through the lens of our desire to find meaning? Some scientists remain cautious, hesitant to grant the word language to processes they see as mechanistic. They argue that molecules drifting in the air are no different than smoke from a fire. Signals, yes, but not words, not thought. Others, however, look closer and see intentionality. They see trees that warn only kin, protecting family while leaving strangers to fend for themselves. They see trees that respond differently depending on the kind of attack, tailoring signals not randomly but specifically. In those choices, they glimpse the possibility of vocabulary, of nuance, of conversation. Between certainty and wonder lies the place where imagination takes root. Perhaps it does not matter whether you call it language in the strictest sense. What matters is the recognition that communication flows within the forest, whether through scent, vibration, or chemistry. And if communication flows, then listening becomes possible. The question is not only, do trees speak? It is also, can you hear them? To listen, you must let go of speed. Your speech runs in seconds. Theirs runs in seasons. Imagine a sentence that takes a year to form, a word that stretches across decades. Imagine conversations where the pause between responses is longer than a human lifetime. In such a world, meaning is not fleeting but enduring. Words do not vanish into silence but echo across generations. A warning released today may protect saplings tomorrow. A signal sent in one season may shape survival in the next. This is a language of patience. It is not made for instant clarity, but for lasting influence. It is the forest's way of ensuring continuity, of weaving its nervous system across time. Where your conversations dissolve as quickly as breath fades into air, the conversations of trees are etched into chemistry, into soil, into memory. And yet, when you walk through a forest, you rarely notice this hidden dialogue. The air smells of pine, of earth, of rain. You sense freshness, sharpness, sweetness. But beneath those impressions lie codes, instructions, warnings. The forest is speaking all around you, but you hear only the fragrance, not the words. To learn this language would be to shift your senses, to read with your nose, to listen with your skin, to attune to the whispers of molecules drifting unseen. If you pause, if you let yourself sink into the stillness, you might catch an echo. The forest feels different when you walk in silence. There is a sense of being observed, of being part of something greater. Perhaps that feeling is not illusion. Perhaps it is resonance. Perhaps it is the nervous system of the earth brushing against your own, reminding you that language is not owned by humans alone. What is language but the transfer of meaning from one being to another? Trees do this constantly, though not in syllables or syntax. They transfer meaning through chemistry, through vibration, through persistence. They warn, they heal, they adapt, they influence. They remind you that communication does not require words, that listening does not require ears, and so you are left with the question, are you willing to call this language? Or do you resist, preferring to keep the boundary between human and tree, between speech and chemistry, between thought and process? The answer may not matter as much as the openness to wonder, because to lean into the possibility that trees are speaking is to reimagine your relationship with them, not as passive background, not as silent scenery, but as voices in their own right. Voices older, slower, and perhaps wiser than your own. The forest does not hurry to convince you. It will go on speaking whether you believe or not. But if you listen, truly listen, something changes in you. You begin to sense that your breath is not the only one carrying meaning, that your words are not the only ones weaving reality. You begin to feel that you are in the presence of a dialogue so vast, so patient, that it humbles your own speech into quiet reverence. And as you rest in that reverence, a realization begins to dawn. If the forest speaks in scents and signals, then perhaps it also thinks in time frames beyond your own. Perhaps its language is not only about messages of the moment, but about the unfolding of centuries. Perhaps the words of trees are not only molecules, but ages themselves, stretched into forms of memory that exceed the span of your life. Which brings us softly to another question. If the forest's language is written across centuries, then what does it mean to step into its time? What does it mean to live beside beings who think and breathe on a scale far longer than your own heartbeat, your own breath, your own lifetime? When you stand before a tree that has lived for centuries, something inside you quiets. The noise of your thoughts softens, the urgency of your worries fades. For in the presence of such age, your own life feels like a flicker, a brief spark against a backdrop of deep and patient time. Where you count your years by decades, the forest counts in centuries. Where your life unfolds in moments, theirs unfolds in ages. To step into a forest is to step into a slower heartbeat, a longer memory, a time that stretches beyond human breath. Your body moves fast, cells dividing, thoughts racing, choices made in seconds. But the tree grows slow. Its decisions stretch across seasons, its responses measured in rings of wood, its life written in circles that spiral outward year by year. A seed falls into the soil, waits through frost, waits through drought, waits through storms, and still, patiently, it rises. Decades may pass before it reaches the height of your home, centuries before it reaches the height of your awe. The forest does not hurry, for it has no need to. Imagine a nervous system that does not fire in milliseconds, but in centuries. Imagine messages carried not in bursts of electricity, but in the steady growth of roots, in the slow weaving of canopies, in the measured rhythm of birth, death, and renewal. Where your neurons spike and vanish in less than a blink, the forest thinks in patterns of persistence, in cycles too wide for your eyes to fully grasp. Its nervous system stretches not across seconds, but across ages, forming a consciousness of slowness, a patience beyond imagination. This is why the forest feels eternal. It is not eternal, of course. Every tree will fall, every leaf will crumble, every root will one day return to soil. But the scale of its time dwarfs your own. What feels like permanence is only endurance stretched so far beyond your years that it appears unchanging. You visit a tree as a child and it looks the same when you return as an elder. But in its silence, in its rings, it has been moving all along, stretching toward light, sinking deeper into earth, reshaping itself with every passing season. In this way, the forest teaches you about patience, shows you that life need not be hurried to be complete, Where you rush to achieve, it reminds you that growth itself is achievement. Where you fear endings, it shows you that death is not failure but transformation. For every fallen trunk becomes a nursery for moss and fungi. Every patch of decay becomes a birthplace for new shoots. The forest is never finished, yet it is never incomplete. To walk among ancient trees is to feel your own timeline bend. You measure yourself against them, and the comparison humbles you. You realize how brief your presence is, how quickly your story will pass. Yet rather than despair, this brings comfort. For the forest whispers that brevity is not insignificance. A flicker of light still illuminates. A single breath still carries life. The trees have seen countless generations rise and vanish, and still they stand, not dismissing you but including you in the endless weave. Think of how trees endure storms. Winds howl, lightning strikes, snow bends their branches. Some break, some fall, but many stand, their resilience written into their fibers. Their strength is not only in their height, but in their patience, in their willingness to bend, to wait, to recover. The forest teaches you that survival is not always about resistance. It is often about surrender, about flowing with time rather than against it. Birth, growth, decay, rebirth. This is the rhythm of the forest's time. A seedling emerges tender and small. It stretches upward, chasing light, competing with neighbors, reaching for space in the canopy. It grows year upon year, thickening its trunk, widening its roots, building a body of strength. Eventually it begins to decline. Its branches weaken, fungi creep in, insects carve their homes into its bark. To you this may look like an end, but to the forest it is only a transition. For in decay, nutrients return to the soil, feeding the young. In collapse, light floods the ground, giving birth to new growth. Death is not silence here. It is another form of speech. To feel the forest is to step out of your own narrow timeline and into green eternity. It is to imagine a nervous system that does not panic with every passing moment, but breathes slowly, patiently across ages. It is to feel what it means to exist without rushing, to live in cycles instead of straight lines. Your life may be brief compared to a tree's, but in the forest's presence, you glimpse a broader truth. All life is part of a larger rhythm, one that transcends your years, one that does not end with you. And yet, even this eternity has its contrasts. For though forests think in centuries, they can be undone in moments. One spark, one axe, one storm, and centuries of growth may vanish in hours. This contrast between slowness and suddenness, between endurance and vulnerability, reminds you that nothing is guaranteed, not even the most patient of lives. Still, the forest endures by remembering, by regenerating, by weaving destruction into the fabric of renewal. Perhaps this is the deepest wisdom of forest time, that nothing is wasted. Every breath, every fall, every death becomes part of a larger whole. Even your brief flicker contributes, just as every leaf contributes to the canopy, every root to the soil, every drop of water to the stream. You do not need to live for centuries to matter. You only need to take your place within the pattern, as trees take theirs, as seeds take theirs, as the forest takes its own. If you quiet yourself, you can almost feel this eternity within you. Your heartbeat slows to match the forest's rhythm. Your breath deepens, your thoughts stretch. You begin to sense the patience of soil, the endurance of roots, the resilience of rings. You begin to feel that time is not rushing past you, but flowing through you as it flows through the trees. And in that stillness, another realization comes. If forests think in centuries, then destruction too must be understood differently. For what looks like loss in your timescale may be renewal in theirs. A fire may feel like death, but to the forest, it can also be awakening. Just as pain in the body is not only suffering, but signal, so too can destruction be message. Perhaps flames themselves are a form of speech in the language of the forest. The forest does not always whisper. Sometimes it screams. A dry summer stretches too long. A storm sparks lightning. or the careless flick of human firelight catches on brittle bark. Then silence collapses into roar. The flames leap orange against green, racing along treetops as if they too are alive, hungry, restless, impatient. What looks to us like catastrophe to the forest is something older, something written into its very being, the necessity of burning. We think of fire as ending, yet in the forest it is also a beginning. In the flames, bark peels back, branches collapse, and the cathedral of leaves turns to smoke. Ash falls in slow curtains, settling into the soil like an afterthought. To human eyes it feels like tragedy, a graveyard where beauty once stood. But beneath the ashes, something stirs. For some trees, fire is not enemy, but ally. Cones sealed in resin wait for the heat to crack them open, releasing seeds that fall into the cleared ground, now free of competition. Saplings take their chance where giants once towered. Nutrients once locked in wood return to the soil in an instant, spread wide by the fire's hand. What decay would take decades to release, fire gives back in a single night. In this way, fire is the forest's wound, and its healing. Like pain coursing through your own nervous system, it sends a signal. Something has broken, but in breaking, something can be repaired. Pain warns the body to protect itself, to remember injury and adapt. Fire does the same for the forest. It is both agony and wisdom, a messenger written in flame. When flames rush through, animals flee, birds scatter, and the forest seems emptied of life. But life does not abandon it, it reshapes itself. The blackened trunks stand like monuments, their scars reminders of survival. From their bases, new shoots emerge, bright and defiant. Grasses sprout first, thin green threads weaving through the ash. Soon, wildflowers paint the clearing, attracting bees, butterflies, and the first return of songbirds. What looked like death becomes a meadow alive with color and motion, and slowly, trees return. Saplings lift themselves toward the light, taking advantage of the space cleared by fire. For decades, they will grow, their roots digging into the memory of ash, their trunks carrying faint signs of the flames that birthed them. In time, another forest rises where the old one fell. Fire, then, is not only destruction, but continuity. A chapter turned, not the end of the book. You can think of it as the pulse of the forest's nervous system under stress. Just as your body burns with fever to fight infection, the forest burns to reset itself. Just as neurons fire with pain to warn of danger, flames lick across bark to warn of imbalance. The forest's health depends not on escaping fire, but on remembering it. Humans have often misunderstood this. For centuries, we feared fire so deeply that we tried to eliminate it wherever it appeared. We stamped out flames, suppressed natural burns, and reshaped forests into places that did not know how to renew themselves. The result was paradoxical. Forests became weaker, more vulnerable. Without fire's cleansing hand, deadwood piled high, making later blazes far more destructive than they would have been. By silencing the forest's pain signal, we made the wounds deeper when they came, but the forest has always known the truth. Fire is not the end. Fire is a messenger. Its roar is not the silence of death, but the urgent cry of renewal. In the crackle of branches, in the rush of smoke, in the fierce glow of night skies, the forest is telling us what the body tells us when we bleed. This is hurt, but this is also healing. Walk through a burned forest and listen. The silence is not empty. You may hear the rustle of small animals returning, the faint hum of insects building new homes. You may notice the stark beauty of charred trunks, each one etched with the memory of fire. The soil beneath your feet feels richer, darker, alive with new possibility. You realize you're walking not through a cemetery, but through a nursery, life waiting to unfold. And so, the nervous system of the earth does what ours does. It remembers pain, learns from it, and grows stronger. The fire does not erase the forest. It writes resilience into its very roots. Just as your mind changes after a wound, carrying scars and new strengths, so does the forest. Pain is not a mistake, it is a teacher. Fire, then, is the teacher of forests, burning through weakness, awakening seeds, and reminding all who live within that life is not fragile, but tenacious. And when the smoke clears, and the sky turns blue once more, the forest breathes again. From ash, green returns. From silence, song. From loss, renewal. Because fire, too, is part of the forest's voice, and as the flames subside, another song begins, quieter, gentler, but no less vital. Above the blackened ground, leaves unfurl, reaching for the sun. Every leaf becomes a panel of light, a listener for photons, a translator of energy into sugar. What begins as fire's roar becomes light's hymn, and the forest shifts from the language of destruction to the symphony of photosynthesis, where shadows and brightness dance across 1,000 green instruments, and the music of survival continues. The forest, newly quiet after the storm of fire, begins again with a whisper so soft it could almost be mistaken for silence. Yet, if you watch closely, you see it. A shimmer of green returning to blackened soil, 1,000 tiny panels lifting toward the sky. Leaves unfurl as though they have been waiting for this very moment, reaching to catch the first gift of dawn. Each leaf is not just a surface, it is a listening ear. To us, sunlight is brightness, warmth on the skin, but to the forest light is language. Photons tumble down from the sun, ancient messengers traveling across 93 million miles of emptiness to land here. On this fragile skin of earth, when they strike a leaf, something astonishing begins. Inside, chlorophyll stirs. Molecules awaken to the dance of light, pulling energy out of invisibility. The leaf hums in silent music, turning sunlight into sugar, light into life. What seems like chemistry alone is far more. It is symphony, rhythm, translation. Every photon is a note, every leaf a musician, every forest a great orchestra playing a song that has never ceased since life first found its way onto land. The score of this symphony is written in green, for green is not just a color, but a survival strategy, a way to capture what others cannot. The chlorophyll rejects red and blue, holding only what it needs, and what is not used returns to your eyes as green. You see the refusal, the leftover, the echo of photosynthesis itself. Every time you look at a tree, you are looking at the spectrum of life's choice. From this music, sugars flow, down veins of leaves, through branches, into roots, carried to every part of the tree. These sugars are stories of the sun, bottled energy ready to be shared. A tree is both composer and archivist, writing sunlight into matter. And when it offers fruit, when it drops leaves, when it feeds the soil, it is sharing its sheet music with the world. Think of your nervous system, the way electrical impulses spark, lighting up thoughts, moving muscles, keeping memory alive. The forest's nervous system is lit not by neurons, but by photosynthesis. Where your mind glows with synapses, the forest glows with chloroplasts. Both are systems of transformation, taking invisible signals and turning them into life. Listen carefully, and you may sense the tempo. Morning brings a crescendo, leaves opening wide, the rhythm of photosynthesis quickening with the rising sun. At noon, the music is at its brightest, an orchestra in full swell. And as evening comes, the tempo slows, leaves relax, and the forest sighs itself into dusk. A daily concert played across continents, uniting every blade of grass and towering tree in the same ancient score. This is not only science, but poetry embedded in reality. To know that every breath you take is a direct result of this symphony, that the oxygen filling your lungs was once light dancing in a leaf, is to understand connection in its deepest sense. You do not stand apart from this music. You are inside it. With every inhale, you are joining the chorus. With every exhale, you return your verse to the song, and perhaps that is why forests calm us. Walk beneath a canopy and your body slows. Your breathing falls into rhythm with the trees. Your heart beats steady. The nervous chatter of the mind softens, as if some hidden conductor is reminding you that you too are an instrument of light transformed. The forest, through photosynthesis, is not only feeding your body but steadying your spirit. Even in shadows, the song continues. Not every leaf bathes in full sunlight. Many grow beneath others, catching what trickles down. Yet they adapt, tuning themselves to faint light, making music in dimness. In this way, no space is wasted. The symphony is layered, complex, full of harmonies between shade and sun. Now imagine this on a planetary scale. Every forest, every grassland, every tiny leaf across Earth working together in unison. The planet glows with green music, invisible yet essential. Without it, oxygen would vanish, energy would fade, and life itself would falter. The nervous system of the Earth would go dark. But because of photosynthesis, it burns ever brighter, an orchestra spanning billions of years. This is why fire, even in its destruction, always leads back here. Fire clears the stage, but light writes the next score. Out of ashes rises green, and with it, the music of life resumes. Destruction and creation are not enemies, but partners in this endless performance. Think of the sun itself, a star burning for billions of years, flinging out light across the void. We on this small planet are its audience, and the forest its translator. Without trees, light would remain untouchable, a brilliance that warms but does not feed. With trees, light becomes bread, fruit, breath. The forest is the great interpreter, turning fire into song, turning starlight into survival. And when you stand still in that quiet, watching leaves shimmer in the breeze, you can almost hear it. Not in sound, but in sensation. A slow, patient melody that says, life persists, life transforms, life remembers, because trees do remember. They hold rings inside their trunks, each one a record of seasons past, wet years, dry years, the scars of storms, the gifts of sun. Every ring is a line of music etched into wood, a score you could read if only you knew the language. The forest keeps the memory of light, written not on paper but in living flesh, so when you breathe in, you are not only inhaling oxygen, you are inhaling memory. The sunlight of past summers, the resilience of fire's aftermath, the patient labor of leaves. You are carrying within you a piece of the forest's song, the green notes of photosynthesis woven into your very blood. And as your body translates that oxygen into thought, movement and heartbeat, you are completing the circuit. The forest music becomes your nervous system's spark. Light becomes life, and life becomes awareness. The symphony of the forest finds its echo in the symphony of the mind. Yet this orchestra does not play alone. For just as light flows into green, water flows into everything. Every note of photosynthesis depends on rivers rising through trunks, droplets pulled skyward, clouds waiting to fall. Without water, the song falters, the instruments fall silent. And so the symphony of light leans on another system, one just as vital, the circulation of water running through roots, veins, clouds and streams, the nervous system of fluid life. The forest has a heartbeat, you can feel it in the water. It moves quietly, invisibly at times, yet it is always there, pulsing beneath the surface, threading through roots, rising into clouds. Water runs like blood through the body of the earth, and forests are the vessels that guide its flow. Without it, the music of light would falter, the leaves would dry into silence. With it, the whole green symphony swells into life. Picture a single drop of rain. It falls from the sky with a softness that belies its power, landing on a leaf or slipping down to the soil. From there, the journey begins. Roots reach out like thirsty fingers, pulling water inward, carrying it upward through veins of xylem, lifting the droplet higher and higher until it evaporates from the leaf's skin back into the air. What was once a bead of rain becomes mist, becomes cloud, becomes rain again. A cycle without end, as intimate as breath, as steady as a heartbeat. In your own body, blood courses through vessels, delivering oxygen, carrying away waste, keeping each cell alive. In the forest, water plays this role. It carries minerals, nourishes seeds, balances heat, connects sky to soil. Just as your nervous system cannot function without circulation, the forest's intelligence cannot exist without water's flow. It is the current that allows the green brain to think, to grow, to endure. And yet, the forest does not only drink water, it makes rivers. Through transpiration, trees lift oceans into the sky. Millions of tiny openings in leaves, called stomata, exhale invisible streams of vapor. Together, whole forests breathe out enough water to form clouds, to guide storms, to bend the path of weather itself. The Amazon, vast and unbroken, is called the flying river because the trees there do what no human city could. They create their own atmosphere. Think of this for a moment. A forest is not only shaped by weather, it is the shaper of weather. Trees do not wait passively for rain, they summon it. Their bodies turn sunlight into energy, and that energy pulls rivers into the air, drifting them into the sky where clouds are born. And when the clouds break, the rain falls again upon the canopy, upon the soil, upon the patient roots that will pull it back upward. The cycle turns endlessly. This balance is delicate. When it holds, the forest is steady, a body in harmony. When it falters, the tremors spread everywhere. If drought comes, trees close their stomata, refusing to breathe out water. Clouds weaken, rainfall dwindles, rivers shrink. The nervous system of water begins to stutter, and the forest trembles as though it were a body losing consciousness. Leaves yellow, roots dry, and life pauses on the edge of silence, and yet resilience runs deep. Just as your body can adapt to injury, forests adapt to thirst. Some trees shed leaves to conserve water. Others grow roots deeper than the tallest buildings, searching for hidden aquifers. Seeds sleep, waiting for the rain's return. Even in the most arid deserts, small green forms persist, clutching water like memory, holding on until balance finds its way back. Water is both a gift and a teacher. It shows us the truth of connection. The drop that fell in a mountain spring may one day flow in your veins, may one day sit in the heartwood of a cedar, may one day return to the sky. Water does not belong to any one creature, place, or moment. It belongs to the cycle. Every sip you take is borrowed from eternity, a momentary possession of something endlessly shared. And perhaps this is why the sound of water soothes us. The babble of a brook, the murmur of rain on leaves, the crashing rhythm of waves, all of them speak to something older than language. They remind you of circulation, of pulse, of balance. The forest knows this rhythm, and so does your body. Life is fluid, and in its movement we find both survival and peace. The nervous system of water is not only about sustenance, but also about memory. Every flood, every drought, every trickle carves its mark into soil and stone. Forests remember through rivers, storing the shape of storms in their valleys, etching the story of rain in the patterns of bark. Just as neurons keep a trace of every spark, the land keeps a trace of every flow. But the forest cannot keep this cycle alone. It leans on allies, creatures great and small, who move through its veins like signals through a nervous system. Fish carry nutrients upstream, beavers shape wetlands, insects guide water through soil tunnels. Life supports flow, and flow supports life. The cycle of water is inseparable from the cycle of beings. It is here that the metaphor deepens. For if the forest is a nervous system, then animals are its neurotransmitters, carrying signals, spreading messages, connecting one region to another. Without them, the system falters. Just as neurons rely on messengers to cross the synaptic gap, the forest relies on wings, paws, and tiny feet to carry seeds, pollens, and fragments of memory across distances. And so, when you watch a bird scatter seeds into the wind, or an insect pause to drink from a droplet on a petal, you are witnessing more than survival. You are witnessing thought made mobile, signals traveling through the forest's vast body. The nervous system of water sets the rhythm, but the carriers of life, feathered, furred, winged, and crawling, compose the messages that travel upon it. The forest is never still, even when silence seems to blanket it. Look closely, and you will see movement everywhere. Fluttering wings, delicate legs brushing against petals, paws pressing into soft soil. These movements are not random. They are signals, transmissions. The forest uses animals the way your neurons use messengers. Each wing beat, each crawl, each rustle is a carrier of information, spreading the forest's memory from root to canopy, from one clearing to the next. Birds are among the most tireless of these couriers. With each flight, they scatter seeds across distances a tree could never reach alone. A berry swallowed in one forest may fall days later as a seedling in another. What seems like a meal is also a message, a relocation of potential, a way for forests to speak across miles. The feathers are not just wings, but envelopes carrying the letters of future forests. Insects are subtler, but no less vital. Their buzzing paths weave unseen bridges of connection. A bee brushes against a flower, lifting pollen as lightly as a whisper, then carries it to another bloom. With each exchange, life is renewed. Without this quiet labor, flowers would fade, fruits would vanish, and the forest's language of reproduction would be silenced. Pollination is a kind of translation, turning individual desire into communal survival. Even the smallest mammals play their part. Squirrels bury acorns, forgetting some in the soil where they sprout into young oaks. Rodents tunnel shifting earth and oxygenating roots. Deer wander, brushing seeds from their coats into new clearings. Each act, whether purposeful or accidental, extends the nervous system outward, as if thought itself was spilling across the landscape, carried by bodies in motion. This is how the forest thinks, not in isolation, but through partnerships. Some messengers work unknowingly, driven only by hunger or instinct. Others, like certain flowers and pollinators, exist in symbiosis, each tuned precisely to the other's needs. Together, they form a living bloodstream of intelligence, a circulation of life and meaning that links soil to sky. Consider how this mirrors your own mind. A neuron sparks with electricity, but the signal cannot leap the gap between it and its neighbor without help. For this, it relies on neurotransmitters, tiny chemical messengers that ferry the signal across the synapse. Without them, thought itself would halt, unable to cross the distance. The forest too relies on its messengers. Birds are its dopamine, bees its serotonin, squirrels its carriers of memory. Without them, the green brain would stutter and fade. There is beauty in this dependence. It reminds us that intelligence, whether biological or ecological, is never solitary. Thought emerges only when connections are made, when one being reaches out to another. A tree cannot walk, but through birds it travels. A flower cannot move, but through bees it finds a partner. A seed cannot speak, but through animals it is carried to new ground. Thought spreads, not because it stays still, but because it moves. And so when you listen to a dawn chorus of birdsong, you are hearing more than music. You are hearing the forest broadcasting itself through wings and throats, messages carried far and wide. When you notice a bee lingering on a bloom, you are watching the handoff of meaning from one life to another. When you see a fox disturb the soil with its paws, you are witnessing a pulse in the great green brain. Each creature is both itself and something greater, a participant in the network that keeps the forest alive. Without these messengers, forests falter. Imagine a silent world without birdsong, without insects weaving their invisible threads, without mammals wandering trails. Seeds would fall where they stand, clustered beneath the shade of their parents, too crowded to thrive. Pollination would fail, and blossoms would wither unfulfilled. The nervous system would lose its messengers, and thought would fade into silence. But the forest, in its patience, has survived such losses before. Extinctions echo like forgotten words, but new languages always arise. Where one pollinator vanishes, another may step in. Where one animal disappears, others may learn to fill the role. This resilience is not careless, it is wisdom. The forest never writes its messages in only one hand. It always has multiple scribes, multiple couriers, multiple voices ready to carry the thought onward. And yet, as you walk among the trees, you may feel that these messengers are speaking to you too. The flicker of a butterfly, the call of a bird, the brush of an insect's wings, they all feel like reminders, gentle invitations to listen. For perhaps you are not only an observer of the forest's intelligence, but also one of its messengers. When you plant a seed, when you carry fruit across distance, when you care for the soil, you too become part of the circulation. You too carry thought. This truth draws us closer to a profound realization. The forest and your mind are not strangers. The parallels are too deep, too persistent. Both rely on messengers, both depend on connections, both thrive when signals move freely. When you stand in a forest, breathing deeply, listening to birds, watching insects at work, you are not only watching another system, you are watching a mirror. And in that mirror, your mind slows. Your stress softens. You feel, perhaps without words, that you are resonating with something familiar. Why does the forest heal us? Is it because of its chemicals, its scents, its rhythms? Or is it because deep down you recognize yourself in it? Stand long enough in a forest, and something curious begins to happen. Your shoulders loosen. Your breath deepens. The restless churn of thought slows as if your mind has found a rhythm outside itself. This is not just relaxation, it is recognition. Somewhere in the tangle of roots, the branching of trees, the murmurs of leaves, you see yourself reflected. The forest and your brain are not strangers. Both are built on networks. Both depend on signals. Both thrive on memory and feedback loops that stretch across time. When we walk beneath the canopy, it is not simply beauty we encounter. It is kinship. Your brain is a dense web of neurons. Billions of cells, each whispering to the next across tiny gaps. The forest is no less intricate. Beneath the soil, fungal threads weave between roots, carrying sugars, minerals, even warning signals. Above ground, animals carry seeds, insects carry pollen, winds scatter spores. Both systems are messy, redundant, and endlessly adaptive. Both live not in isolated parts, but in the connections between them, and in both, the individual is never the whole. A single neuron cannot think. A single tree cannot sustain a forest. But when joined together, when signals flow freely, thought arises. Consciousness, perhaps, is nothing more than the chorus of connections. The same might be said of the forest's intelligence. This mirroring goes deeper still. Your brain remembers, so does the forest. Neurons strengthen the more often they fire together. Your memories are literally the repetition of pathways. Forests too hold memory. A scarred trunk remembers fire. Soil enriched with fallen leaves remembers seasons of abundance. Even seeds, dormant for years, remember the right conditions to wake again. Memory in both brain and forest is not written in ink, but in patterns. Patterns of growth, patterns of response. Feedback is another shared language. When you touch something hot, signals race through your nervous system, commanding your hand to withdraw. When insects strip a tree's leaves, roots send signals through fungi, warning nearby trees to produce bitter chemicals. Feedback protects, adjusts, recalibrates. The forest, like the brain, survives not by rigidity but by responsiveness. Perhaps this is why forests soothe us. It is not only the air, rich with oxygen and grounding scents. It is not only the silence punctuated by birdsong and wind. It is the recognition of a familiar architecture. Standing beneath tall trees, you are surrounded by a living network that behaves like your own mind. You resonate with it because you are built by the same principles. There is a word for this recognition: resonance. Two strings tuned to the same pitch vibrate together when one is struck. Your brain and the forest may be two such strings humming at frequencies that align. When you breathe in sync with the forest's slow rhythms, you feel calmer, clearer. It is not magic. It is kinship. Science offers fragments of explanation. Studies show that time in forests lowers cortisol, the stress hormone. Heart rate slow, immune system strengthen. Patterns of natural fractals, branching trees, flowing rivers, spreading leaves, are soothing to the human eye, perhaps because they echo the fractal geometry within our own biology. What we call healing may be, at its root, recognition. And recognition raises a provocative question. Do we feel calm in the forest because it heals us, or because deep down we are simply seeing ourselves in it? Consider dreams. When you dream, your brain projects a world from within itself. But what if, walking through a forest, you are entering a dream not of your making, but one in which you still recognize the shapes of thought? The forest is not your brain, but it is like your brain, and likeness is enough to awaken familiarity. This is why metaphors between the two come so easily. Trees are neurons. Mycelium is wiring. Birdsong is signaling. Rivers are veins. Leaves are thoughts flickering in and out of the light. These comparisons are not forced. They spring up as naturally as moss after rain. They remind us that the line between metaphor and reality is sometimes thin, sometimes shifting. For in truth, the forest does not need to be exactly a brain for the mirror to matter. It only needs to behave in ways that rhyme with thought. Rhymes are not identities, but they stir the imagination. They let us glimpse ourselves in the other, and the other in us. And yet we must pause. For if the forest reflects us so clearly, what does it mean when we wound it? What does it mean when networks are severed, connections broken, memories erased? If a forest is a mirror of mind, then deforestation is not only an ecological loss, it is a forgetting, a destruction of memory, a breakdown of thought, the burning of neural pathways in a brain far larger than our own. This realization does not only invite awe, it invites responsibility. To harm the forest is to harm something that reflects us. To heal the forest is to heal something that sustains us. The mirror is not just beautiful. It is ethical, but not everyone agrees with this mirror. Some say the parallels are nothing more than poetic exaggerations. They argue that to call a forest a mind or intelligence is to stretch language too far, to confuse metaphor with fact. Skeptics remind us that while neurons are proven carriers of thought, trees and fungi follow chemical imperatives with no evidence of consciousness. The forest may look like a brain, but resemblance is not reality. And here, at this boundary, we arrive at a fertile tension. On one side lies science, demanding proof, resisting metaphor. On the other lies wonder, willing to see likeness as possibility. Between them stretches a field of imagination where doubt sharpens and wonder expands. This tension is not a flaw. It is the very space where meaning grows. Doubt prevents us from believing too quickly. Wonder prevents us from dismissing too quickly. Together, they ensure that the forest remains alive in our minds, not as mere biology, not as mere fantasy, but as something richer, stranger, harder to define. Which leads us to our next question. When we call the forest a nervous system, are we uncovering truth or weaving myth? Is this a scientific reality or a human dream projected onto trees? The answer lies ahead, in the dialogue between skepticism and imagination. The metaphor is powerful, almost irresistible, a forest as a nervous system. Roots as neurons, fungi as synapses, signals flowing through soil as thoughts. But step into a laboratory, and the metaphor begins to wobble under the fluorescent light of scrutiny. Scientists trained to separate poetry from proof Ask a simple question: is it true? For decades, research has suggested that trees can share resources, warn each other of danger, and shape their growth in response to neighbors. Suzanne Simard's studies on the Wood Wide Web popularized the image of forests whispering underground, passing carbon and nitrogen through fungal highways. To many, this was evidence that the forest communicates. Yet, others countered, communication is a human word, heavy with intention. Perhaps it is nothing more than chemical transaction, no different than clouds drifting or rivers flowing, and so the debate sharpens. When one tree sends signals to another, is it truly a message, or just a side effect of chemical diffusion? When fungi deliver sugars, are they cooperating or simply exploiting supply and demand? Science bristles at words like warning, sharing, intelligence. These words, skeptics argue, smuggle human meaning into processes that may be entirely blind. Yet wonder resists reduction. For even if trees and fungi are driven by chemistry alone, does that diminish their mystery? After all, your brain itself is only chemistry, a storm of ions and molecules. Thought, memory, emotion. What are they but biological reactions translated into meaning? If a forest's exchanges mirror our own, can we so easily dismiss them as coincidence? Here lies the fertile middle ground, doubt as discipline, wonder as invitation. Doubt keeps us honest. It reminds us that metaphors are not measurements, that imagination must not replace evidence. Wonder, meanwhile, keeps us open. It whispers that even if the forest is not a nervous system in the strictest sense, the likeness still matters. It reframes our perception, making us see more deeply, more reverently. Perhaps the truth is not a question of either or, but of both and. A forest may not be a brain in the way yours is, but it may still function as a network of responses and adaptations that echo the patterns of thought. The metaphor, then, is not a lie. It is a bridge, a way to carry human minds into the slow intelligence of trees. Philosophers remind us that all knowledge begins in metaphor. Long before science measures imagination names, we once called the heart the seat of the soul, the heavens a clockwork of divine design, the atom a miniature solar system. Each was later refined, revised, sometimes discarded. Yet without these metaphors, the inquiry may never have begun. To see a forest as a nervous system is not to settle truth, but to spark curiosity. Still, danger lurks in wonder without restraint. If we believe too readily, we risk slipping into fantasy, hearing intention where there is none, inventing stories to comfort rather than to clarify. Science saves us from this by demanding rigor, evidence, skepticism. It reminds us that forests are not people, that trees do not think in words, that fungi are not philosophers whispering wisdom underground. But danger also lurks in doubt without wonder. Strip the world of metaphor, and forests become nothing but timber. Reduce every process to utility, and mystery collapses into monotony. Wonder keeps the forest alive not only in ecology, but in imagination. It is wonder that makes a child press an ear to the bark of a tree, listening for a heartbeat. It is wonder that makes a scientist spend decades tracking signals in the soil. Without wonder, the questions fall silent. Thus, the forest lives in tension between fact and story, between skepticism and dream. And perhaps this tension is not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be held. For in that space, science and philosophy dance together, each correcting, each inspiring. Doubt sharpens the edges of knowledge. Wonder expands its horizon. So the forest remains both, a system of chemicals and a mirror of thought. Neither definition alone is complete. Both are needed. Together they ensure that we keep asking, keep looking, keep leaning closer to hear what whispers through the leaves. And yet, while we debate, the forest itself faces trials greater than our metaphors. Doubt and wonder do not stop the chainsaw. Speculation does not shield against flame. While we argue over whether the forest is a nervous system, we may miss the fact that its nerves are being severed, its signals silenced. For what happens when the mirror cracks? What happens when the living network is torn apart, when messages fail to travel, when memory is burned to ash? This is where the metaphor meets its darkest test, in the disruption of the forest's nervous system. Imagine a body whose nerves are slowly cut away. Signals falter, coordination fails, memory thins, healing grows clumsy. What once was fluid becomes fractured. This is what happens when forests fall. The nervous system of Earth does not scream when a tree is felled, yet silence is its own alarm, a gap where connection used to be. Deforestation is not just the absence of trees. It is the interruption of patterns. Each trunk lost is not simply wood removed, but a node severed from its neighbors. Roots no longer intertwine, fungi no longer trade sugars or warnings, the underground whispers collapse into static. Where there was once a symphony of exchange, silence spreads. Like a stroke striking the brain, the forest begins to forget itself. In healthy forests, wounds are remembered. After a fire, signals ripple through the soil, seeds sprout where ash falls, nutrients redistribute with purpose. But when the system is fragmented, memory becomes shallow. The lessons of pain cannot reach distant roots. A disease that might once have been checked by a neighbor's warning now spreads unchecked. A pest that might have been resisted through cooperation now devours in quiet triumph. Without connection, resilience weakens. The nervous system metaphor grows sharper here. Climate change is not only heat or drought, it is confusion. It is misfired signals. It is feedback loops that once balanced now spiraling into chaos. Rain falls in torrents where it once trickled gently, while lands that relied on steady showers grow dry. Temperature shifts blur the cues that trees have used for millennia. Buds open too early, flowers bloom without pollinators, roots search in vain for water that no longer comes. A forest in disorientation trembles like a body in shock, and yet, even within collapse, fragments of resilience remain. Seeds, tiny capsules of memory, hold instructions written over countless generations. They wait in soil, patient and unread, until the right conditions awaken them. A burned grove may blacken into desolation, yet after rain, green shoots pierce the ash. Life remembers even when the network is cut. The forest holds recovery in its code, though not all wounds can be healed at the pace destruction now unfolds. This is the paradox of our time. We dismantle forests faster than they can remember how to grow. We cut threads in a tapestry whose pattern we do not yet understand. The Amazon, often called the lungs of Earth, is losing its rhythm. Where rivers of moisture once rose into the sky, drought now lingers. Fires eat deeper than before, no longer natural pulses, but ravenous surges, stripping soil of its ability to recover. In Southeast Asia, mangroves fall, their watery roots no longer buffering storms. In boreal forests, thawing permafrost releases ancient gases, adding to the fever of the air. Science measures these losses in hectares, in carbon tonnage, in gigatons of emissions. But listen differently and you might hear it as a slowing heartbeat, as neurons failing to fire. A forest cut apart is not only a reduction in biomass, it is a reduction in thought, in memory, in coherence. Yet despair is not the whole story. Where destruction severs, restoration can reweave. Reforestation, when done with care, is not just planting trees, but reconnecting circuits. When corridors link fragmented forests, animals return as messengers, pollen flows, seeds scatter, water recycles, balance hesitantly reforms. Even small groves can serve as sparks, reigniting the wider network when given space and time. The question is not only whether the forest can heal, but whether we will allow the time for healing. Our species lives in quick bursts, elections, markets, lifetimes measured in decades. The forest breathes in centuries. To protect it, We must stretch our imagination across time, thinking not just for ourselves, but for futures we will never see. And here, the nervous system metaphor folds back upon us. For just as forests weaken when connections are cut, so too do societies falter when they forget their own interdependence. To cut the forest is to cut ourselves, for the air you breathe, the water you drink, the calm you feel beneath branches, all depend upon those green circuits running whole. When they fragment, so too does our stability. Perhaps this is why the metaphor feels so haunting. It is not only the forest's nervous system that is disrupted, it is our own. Anxiety rises with deforestation, not just emotionally, but biologically. As heat increases, as storms grow, as crops wither, our collective nerves fray. We become restless in tandem with the earth. The disruption out there echoes in here. Still, seeds lie waiting. Forests teach that memory endures in small beginnings, in silent patience. Even when whole continents shift, even when ice ages roll and reseed, life has returned, weaving new webs upon old ruins. The resilience of forests whispers not of certainty, but of possibility. If life can re-emerge from ash, might we too re-emerge wiser from disruption? Close your eyes and imagine the network not as destroyed, but as interrupted, paused, like a breath held too long. Imagine it reknitting itself, not in an instant, but slowly, quietly, over years. Imagine corridors replanted, rivers restored, signals traveling once more through root and leaf. Imagine us learning patience, remembering that our survival is braided into theirs, and then lift your gaze upward. For the nervous system metaphor does not end at the edge of the forest floor. Beyond the canopy, beyond the clouds, beyond the atmosphere itself, lies another network. Galaxies stretch across the cosmos, filaments of matter linking clusters of stars like veins, cosmic webs that echo the tangles of roots below your feet. The nervous system of Earth, disrupted though it may be, is mirrored in the nervous system of the universe. Are we inside one vast network? Forests just local echoes of a universal mind? Lift your eyes beyond the canopy, beyond the clouds, into the vast black tapestry overhead. What you see as scattered stars are not scattered at all, but points along an immense hidden web. Galaxies do not float alone in silence. They cluster, connect, and spread along filaments of dark matter, strands so immense they dwarf imagination, yet they curve and weave with a familiarity that feels almost earthly. The cosmic web, stretching across billions of light years, is a forest written in stars. It is humbling to realize that the universe itself appears to favor networks. The same pattern that roots carve beneath soil, galaxies trace upon the void. Clusters link like fungal nodes, filaments stretch like mycelial threads. In the forest, sugars pass from tree to tree, carried by fungi. In the cosmos, energy and matter flow along invisible channels, guided by gravity and the mysterious hand of dark matter. Two vastly different scales, one design repeated. Connection, shaping survival, shaping memory, shaping growth. Scientists have mapped these filaments using telescopes like cartographers of the infinite. What emerges is no random scatter but structure, galaxies aligning into strands, superclusters weaving into webs. The Milky Way, your home, is one thread in this incomprehensible network. Imagine standing in a forest clearing, looking at roots stretching unseen beneath you. Now imagine stepping outside the galaxy, looking at tendrils stretching unseen beyond you. The pattern rhymes. Perhaps the metaphor is more than metaphor. Could it be that life itself is a consequence of networks repeating? Forests create interdependence. So do cosmic webs. Neurons fire in circuits. So do galaxies swirl in gravitational embrace. To be alive may be to be nested within networks, one within another, stretching outward without end. But here we meet a contrast. In forests, the nervous system sustains life we know, leaves, animals, humans breathing. In the cosmos, the nervous system is colder, emptier, a scaffold of stars and dark matter. Does it think, or is it simply structure without soul? Some scientists argue that the cosmic web is nothing more than the natural outcome of gravity's pull across expanding space, as impersonal as water-carving rivers. Others whisper of panpsychism, the idea that consciousness pervades the universe itself, that matter may always be carrying awareness, however faint. Between certainty and speculation, wonder blooms. If a forest can be seen as a brain, why not the cosmos? If neurons in your skull give rise to thought, could galaxies in the universe give rise to something greater, a cosmic consciousness? And if so, are forests not just echoes, but translations, small local dialects of a universal language spoken in roots and stars alike? The poetry of the thought does not erase the rigor of science. Simulations of the universe, such as the Millennium Simulation or Illustris project, show cosmic filaments forming naturally. Yet when researchers compared the structure of those filaments to neural networks in the human brain, the resemblance startled them. Nodes of galaxies connected in ways statistically similar to neurons and synapses, scales apart by 27 orders of magnitude yet following similar mathematical laws. Coincidence or hint? Imagine lying back beneath the trees, looking upward, seeing not only leaves against the stars but roots mirrored in constellations. What if the forest beneath you and the cosmos above you are reflections of the same truth, that the universe favors interconnection? In one, the web carries sugars and warnings. In the other, carries light and gravity. In both, pattern is meaning, structure is survival. And here is where philosophy steps gently in. If forests mirror the cosmos, then when you walk among trees, you are walking within a model of the universe itself. If you listen to the whispers of roots, you might be overhearing the larger whispers of galaxies. And if your brain resonates with forests, calming when surrounded by green, it might be because the same pattern that built your neurons built the stars. You are not an outsider looking upon these systems. You are inside them, built of them, carrying their echoes in your blood and thought. Consider how forests breathe carbon and oxygen, exchanging gases with the sky. Now consider how galaxies breathe hydrogen and helium, fusing them into heavier elements, scattering those elements in supernovae, which later gather into planets, into soil, into you. The nervous system of the cosmos does not whisper quickly. It writes its sentences over billions of years, stars as syllables, supernovae as punctuation. Yet you are one of its words. This thought is both comforting and dizzying. Comforting because it assures you that connection is not local but universal. Dizzying because it places you within a mind that may be unimaginably vast, perhaps indifferent, perhaps quietly aware. Does the cosmos think, or does it only provide the conditions for beings like you to think? Science leans toward the latter, philosophy toward the former. But wonder thrives in the space between. Forests remind us that networks need not be conscious in the way we understand consciousness to function intelligently. Mycorrhizal webs distribute resources wisely without a central brain. Could the universe then be intelligent without a consciousness resembling ours? Could purpose emerge from pattern alone? Close your eyes and feel the scale stretch. Roots beneath your feet, rivers in your veins, synapses in your brain, galaxies overhead. Each one pulses, each one carries signals, each one binds smaller parts into a larger whole. You, the forest, the cosmos, all participating in the same archetype. A nervous system spread across time and space. Perhaps this is why the metaphor of the forest as Earth's nervous system feels so profound. It is not only about trees and roots. It is about seeing that the patterns of life and thought are fractal, echoing across scales. To feel the forest is to glimpse the cosmos. To study the cosmos is to understand the forest anew. Both whisper that we belong not in isolation, but in connection, and so the question lingers softly. Are we inside one great living network, Or are we simply creatures projecting our desire for meaning onto stars and roots alike? Science may not yet answer. Philosophy does not need to. Wonder is enough. As your mind drifts in this thought, you return gently to where the journey began. To the leaves above, to the whispers below, to the breath of forests carrying you into rest. For every cosmic web you imagine, every galaxy you picture, finds its echo in the simple silence of a grove. The stars overhead and the roots beneath your feet complete each other. And as the vast networks of the cosmos dissolve into the intimate hum of the forest, you prepare to return to the beginning, to the whisper beneath the leaves, where knowledge and imagination intertwine, and where the forest itself becomes your lullaby. The journey ends where it began, beneath the cathedral of leaves, lying still on the forest floor. The ground is damp but forgiving, cushioned with centuries of fallen matter turned into soil. Overhead, the canopy filters sunlight into a slow, dappled rhythm, like an ancient clock marking time in shadows instead of seconds. If you close your eyes, the forest hums, not with noise but with a presence. This is where it started with a question: what if forests think? And now, after wandering through fire, water, networks and stars, you return here, only slightly changed, carrying answers that feel less like conclusions and more like invitations. The forest, in its silence, has been speaking all along. It was never a single language, but many, scents of warning, vibrations of roots, ripples of water, crackle of fire, the feathered flight of birds scattering seeds. All threads in a tapestry woven so slowly that your impatient eyes could miss it. Now, as you lie still, you notice how your breath falls into rhythm with the space around you. The air is no longer background. It feels alive, shared, like you are inhaling not only oxygen, but memory itself. Throughout this journey, forests revealed themselves as mirrors. Fire became not only destruction, but the nervous system's memory of pain. Light was not only energy, but the music of thought translated into sugars. Water was not only a resource, but circulation. Veins stretched across landscapes. Animals, too, became neurons carrying signals, moving seeds and ideas alike. Even the cosmos seemed to bend toward similarity, galaxies forming webs that echoed roots underground. And through it all, you began to notice how your own mind resonated, how the stress fell away, how the pulse slowed, how the forest shaped thought. Coming back here is not repetition, but return. The way seasons return, not to the same leaf, but to another shaped by the same tree. You are not the same listener you were at the beginning. Back then, the question felt distant, abstract, like an idea belonging to science or philosophy. Now it feels closer, like a whisper tucked into your chest. It is tempting to think of forests as separate, vast green entities out there, visited only when you choose to step into them. But the truth is more intimate. The forest is not out there. It is within you. Every atom of oxygen in your lungs has passed through countless leaves. Every bite of food you have ever eaten was born of photosynthesis. Even your neurons, sparking thoughts, rely on sugars first sung into existence by chlorophyll. You are a continuation of the forest's work, not an observer, but a participant in its quiet unfolding. When your heart beats, you are feeling not only yourself, but an echo of planetary rhythms, the tides of water, the cycling of carbon, the growth rings of trees slowly widening. This is why the forest feels like a mirror, because it is. The nervous system of trees and fungi, the branching of rivers, the web of roots, they are kin to the branching dendrites in your brain. Patterns repeat. You are part of them. If there is one gift the forest offers, it is patience. Not the grudging patience of waiting in a line, but the expansive patience of life unfolding beyond urgency. A seed may lie dormant for decades before waking. A tree may grow for centuries before falling. A forest may burn, regrow, and burn again across epochs that dwarf human empires. This patience is not passive. It is alive, deliberate, resilient. To return to the forest is to be reminded that slowness is not failure. In a world that measures life in deadlines and alarms, forests offer another rhythm, long, stretching, forgiving. They teach that wisdom is not rushed, that growth is not linear, that healing may take more than a single lifetime.
And yet it happens. Always it happens. Along the way, doubt has walked beside you.
Scientists debate whether roots and fungi truly communicate or whether humans simply project meaning onto complexity. They ask whether calling a forest a nervous system is science or poetry.
Perhaps both.
Perhaps the distinction matters less than we think, for in doubt, imagination sharpens, and in wonder, imagination expands. Forests do not demand certainty. They invite humility. They remind us that not knowing is its own form of wisdom, that awe is not ignorance but recognition of scale. To doubt the forest is to keep looking closer. To wonder at it is to keep listening deeper. And between the two lies a fertile ground where philosophy and science shake hands, where human thought grows alongside roots. Even now, in a time when forests are fragmented, burned, logged, and reshaped, resilience hides in seeds. A single seed carried by wind or bird can begin again. Entire ecosystems wait inside something smaller than your fingernail. Life's memory is compressed into these tiny vessels. Carrying instructions written in patience to lie on the forest floor is to be reminded of this resilience. Beneath the soil around you, countless seeds wait. Some will never wake. Some will wait until fire, flood, or storm opens the door. Some will sprout tomorrow. The forest remembers not through words, but through readiness. Now the hum of the forest feels louder, though in truth it is unchanged. You have simply learned how to hear it. The whisper is not one sound, but many woven together. The creak of branches in the wind, the invisible exhale of leaves, the rustle of unseen animals moving in brush. It is a language older than words, asking for nothing but presence. Lying here, you realize the forest has never asked you to solve it, only to be with it. Knowledge was never the goal, communion was. The nervous system of the earth does not demand certainty from you. It simply invites you to notice, to breathe, to belong. And so the journey circles back to where it began. Under the canopy, listening. But now you carry with you fire and renewal, light and water, animals and galaxies. You carry the recognition that forests are not separate from thought, but part of it. That perhaps you have been inside a mind all along. And so before you rise, let your mind drift back to the beginning, when you were first asked, where are you listening from? That question still matters, not because it demands an answer, but because it roots you in presence. You have carried your place, your time, your breath into this journey. And in doing so, you have woven yourself into the forest's story. Thank you for sharing this path. Quietly, curiously, patiently. Remember, it is okay not to know everything. Curiosity itself is a form of peace, a way of leaning into life without needing to resolve it. The forest reminds us that silence is not empty, it is full, waiting, alive. And if this journey has touched you, stay with it a little longer.
Carry it into your days, into your breath.
If you feel called, share it. Let others step into this green stillness too. Like seeds scattered on the wind, each listener continues the forest's whisper. Like roots deep in soil, we are all connected. So close your eyes once more and listen. The forest has not finished speaking.